Here we go. It's Sunday morning. Turn that down for you guys a little bit. Hold on. We got to get some good JC clips in here to start our Sunday. That's what I'm talking about. We got our orange rock star. That I apparently can't swallow. We good? I think we're good. I got notes. I got things to talk about. So long as I can stop coughing. Last one, okay? Last one, I promise. This is my favorite one of all time. I listen to this whenever I'm just needing a minute. And it has Paul in it, so. Okay. Okay. That'll do it for the intro clips. Let's get this Sunday morning session started. Harley, what's up? Man, look at that. You're here from the jump this morning. I love it. I got church in like an hour and a half, so got some time to kill, got some amusing things happening in the Instagram and Twitter world to go over. So looking forward to that. Maybe talk a little bit about personal subjects such as restarting your entire life over. Occasionally people have to do that, and it can be quite emotionally difficult and disruptive. And seeing as I'm about to do that here in about 3 weeks, it's probably a good time for me to just have a self-talk session about how I've done that twice before. It is not a big deal. Sometimes you just got to do it. So we'll go more into that. I mentioned the Alabama move for Josh is kind of like life 3.0. So I've already done 2 entire lifetimes at this point. So I'm getting pretty good at it. I'm getting pretty good at that old country song, you got to know when to hold 'em and know when to fold 'em. You know, you devote yourself to a certain path for a number of years. You fully pursue it to the best of your ability. And at some point, you do need to make a call. Is this going the same direction as I initially planned and hoped that it was going to go? Or have we stalled out? Or have I actually landed somewhere that isn't even where I thought was where I wanted to be? And that's kind of what happened to me in Life 2.0. So that's why we got to go reboot, do Life 3.0. We'll talk more about that, though, after we hit the news clips that I want to go over. Where to start? You know, I love bragging about myself. Everybody does. You know, anytime I call a news reaction where I predict the future, I predict what's going to happen, that always makes me feel good because it does. It's, you know, it's, you don't want to just pat yourself on the back for the sake of pride. Pride is a sin, obviously. But sometimes in these kind of things where you're trying to read the tea leaves, you're trying to read everything that's going on in the culture and the culture wars, all the suppression of freedom of speech, and you're trying to put together all the pieces as far as who's in control and all that stuff. When you're able to accurately predict the future, that tells you that you have a good read on what's going on. You have figured out who's pulling the strings, who's being blackmailed, you know, who's really in control, all that stuff. So when you can predict the future, that means you're on the right track. Let's get one more clip of our man Nick here. Love my man Nick. All right, Nick. So if you don't know Nick Fuentes, you should be watching his show America First. He's the most banned individual next to Alex Jones in the world. So, I was actually watching a couple documentaries about him, and one of the documentaries is called the most banned man in the world," and the other one is like "the extremist next door." What's going on, Banda? Good to see you in here again this morning. Morning for me, I know. Evening for you. And so I watched these documentaries yesterday about Nick Fuentes. I'll pull it up. Nick Fuentes, most dangerous. Look, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center and according to the ADL, Nick Fuentes is the most dangerous man in the world. Why is he the most dangerous man in the world? Because he talks about controversial subjects such as the Great Replacement. It's not a theory. You know, when you have Chuck Schumer coming out and saying we're going to naturalize all 11 million illegal immigrants who are illegally in our country. We're just going to make them overnight become citizens. What religion is Schumer, by the way? If anybody wants to look that up, I don't know. And meanwhile, we have a negative net birth rate in the country. So it's a proven math situation that natural American-born citizens are being replaced. But that's neither here nor there. Nick talks about that. Nick talks about the realities of racial realism. And this is a super tough one because people get really uncomfortable when you start saying things that can be interpreted as, oh, you're saying one race is smarter than another race. You're saying one race is more violent than another race. And again, when you just share the data that we have, it's like, I'm not saying these things. I'm telling you what the sociological, empirical evidence that we have says. And so I watched Nick Fuentes on No Jumpers interview with a few black guys, and it was an interesting conversation. And they basically wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt because he has this reputation as a white nationalist, white supremacist, misogynistic, racist, homophobic, you know, everything that the ADL just pulls out the punch card and starts going down the list. So they all wanted to know, like, legitimately, why do people say these things about you? And so he laid out his case for the known differences between races. I'll briefly recap. I can't quite put it as eloquently as Nick has because I haven't talked about it as many times. But, you know, if you want some examples, you can start with Asian people. We know for a fact, it's not controversial, it's just what the tests show. Asian people score higher on math tests and all types of standardized testing. Okay? Like, it's just true. That doesn't mean white people are stupid. It doesn't mean black people are stupid. It doesn't mean Asians are superior because they seemingly have higher IQ scores and higher test scores. That's just a fact. You don't see me here as somebody who's not Asian saying, oh, so you're asserting that Asians are supreme or better than other races? No, I'm just saying that there's a category in life, and that is the intelligence quotient and standardized testing in mathematics. Asians excel at these things. It is what it is, guys. And so that's Asians. And then when you look at black people, what do black people excel at? Well, they excel at music and the arts and athleticism. That's their positive attributes that they especially shine when compared to other races. You look at white people. What are white people especially good at? You're looking at the body of evidence in history, not like conjecture or opinion. Well, look at classical European architecture. Look at European literature. There's not really an equivalent of those things accomplished by other races, the same way there's not equivalent sports or music accomplishments different than the black race, the same way that other races don't score as well and don't have as high IQs as Asian people. So race realism needs to be accepted as something that's not controversial. It is true. Honestly, before the entire politically correct age that we live in, everybody knew there were differences between the races. Like, it was just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. Let's not try to lie about it. Let's just acknowledge that we're different and we each have unique advantages, comparative advantages in different parts of life. So in my opinion, that's not that controversial. But if you're trying to talk to a liberal snowflake and you even imply whatsoever that the races at a biological level have different outcomes in life due to their genetics, that is racism, which is absurd. That's just absurd. My opinion, it's just absurd. So, Nick laid out that logic, and, to all the guys on the show's credit, they're like, well, you can't really argue with that. Black people really do deliver when it comes to art and music and that kind of stuff and sports. And we all know Asians test well, and you can't really argue against the fact that you look at these beautiful castles and all these churches that European white people have built over the millennia. I mean, listen, there's a difference. Let's acknowledge it and move on. Stop pretending to hate each other. So yeah, that was how I spent last night. I watched some interesting documentaries that gave you a behind the scenes look at Nick Fuentes' life, and you got to feel for the guy. He's obviously accomplished success and gained a following in his little niche of the world that he's been shoved into. It's not like he chose to not be on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. He's been banned. Not by choice, as said, but by the corrupt, high influence activist groups like the Southern Poverty, what is it called? SPLC and the ADL and these other alleged activist groups who really only exist to push one ethnicity or religious agenda. Okay, so that's my man Nick. This one was pretty funny. World Government Summit 2022 just happened recently. This is the same cabal of people who do the World Economic Forum, same cabal of people who do the World Health Organization. It's the globalists. It's the people who think we need one centralized mega government to run the entire world, that there shouldn't be sovereign nations, that we should have one language that the entire world speaks, that we should have one currency that the entire world uses, and so on. What's going on, Pessoa Sam? I don't know how the hell to say your name, but I see you're a first-time chatter, so thank you for dropping in. We're having a fun Sunday morning, talking about some things in the news. We watched a little bit of motivational Christian material to kick things off. A little like it's a pre-church sample of our man. And now we're talking about some news headlines. So this first one here is a clip. It's a screenshot of a YouTube video where you have the cabal, the globalist cabal, meeting for this World Government Summit, right? And this is the title of their own broadcast. Somebody else didn't take this and interpret it this way. They titled this video, "Are We Ready for a New World Order?" And this is on the World Government Summit's channel. Okay, they chose that title. And then you have the fact checkers, the automatic fact checkers that YouTube has built into its website, coming in immediately and saying, the New World Order is a conspiracy theory which hypothesizes a secret emerging totalitarian world government. Like, you can't even write satire that's this on point. Like, it's sitting there saying world government. It's the name of the summit. And you're sitting here trying to suggesting that there's a world government is a conspiracy theory. And not only that, this very clearly existing and real world government is hosting a panel saying, do we need a new world order? And of course, your fact checker says the new world order is a conspiracy theory. So, if you had any doubt whatsoever in these fact checkers that are tacked on to all the social media sites, they're tacked onto your Twitter feed and your Instagram feed, just ignore them. Just ignore them. 100%. That's a real red pill that people, unfortunately, it's almost like only people who've already taken the red pill know to ignore the fact checkers. Because it's absurdity like this, where things are clearly true, and they still try to say it's a conspiracy theory. you have to know to just disregard the fact checkers. And it's honestly helpful to share stuff like this. This is why it's kind of, the social media exists in a weird place where a lot of people use it to share their life. Here's pictures of me, my fitness progress. Here's pictures of my dog. Here's pictures of my food. They just want to share their personal life. And they don't necessarily want to be social media activists, right? They don't want to share anything controversial that's going to hurt somebody's feelings. If they had problems with COVID, they weren't going to say it. If they have problems with the overt racism, the anti-white racism that's happening in America, they don't want to say it. If they have problems with the gender ideology and saying men can get pregnant or that we should castrate our children, they don't want to say it because they don't want to offend anybody. They just want to use these social media sites to share pictures of themselves and keep everything politically friendly. Well, the problem was that if everybody just agrees to that, then this kind of shit continues to slip under the radar as commonly accepted. It's okay. If nobody's calling it out, if nobody's making fun of it, then, hey, it must be real. So I say all of that to say I'm going to like this post. Make sure you give it some love. I'm going to leave a comment. What can I say? Very obvious conspiracy theory right here. It's not the most insightful comment, but as you guys know, the algorithm, you feed it comments, you feed it likes. That means the post gets more eyeballs on it. That means more people start to become awake to the obvious uselessness of these fact checkers. It's not even that they're useless, guys. It's actually worse than that. They're sinister. They are, if you know how Satan works, Satan doesn't just spread lies. He takes the truth and inverts it. He actually makes people believe the opposite of the truth. And so in this case, when you have the world government itself saying, here we are talking about the New World Order, Satan is going to try to use people to say, you didn't see that. That's not what they said. That's a conspiracy theory. And so you got to know, like, once you're savvy to Satan and his tricks and you see these inversions happening, where it is the literal opposite of the truth, it helps discern, it helps discern who the Christ-like people are in this war and who the others are. So that's just goofiness. This is one of my favorite stories of the day right here. Right here. If you know this is Candace Owens. Candace Owens works for Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro is probably the most well-known conservative, neoconservative political commentator on the internet. Obvious Jew. And so Candace works for him, and Candace came to support Kanye when he came out with the White Lives Matter shirt, when he said the stuff about Jewish people on Tucker Carlson. She was the first one to say, hey, that's my friend. He's not crazy. He doesn't have a mental disorder just because he's talking about Jewish people. So, leave him alone. Let him have his free speech. And so then the big awkward question now is, how does Ben Shapiro handle Candace Owens? Does he fire her because she's clearly standing up to the Jewish mafia? Well, if he fires her, then it looks like he is just abusing his power as a Jew to fire anybody who says something about Jews. So he's kind of in this catch-22 situation. And so I put out a video a couple days ago saying Candace Owens holds the key to the upcoming blacks versus Jew war. And that war is real. It's very real. And you saw just in the last month, Kanye, Kyrie Irving, and Chappelle all get roasted by the Jewish powerful elite for saying that Jews run the media, and not just the media, many of the institutions in the United States. So my opinion was that Candace Owens holds the key to all this, because she is going to be asked, what side are you on? Do you believe that there is a Jewish mafia that basically blackmails people, whether reputationally or financially, into doing their will? Or is that all just a crazy conspiracy theory? Well, here we go. Listen up.
Dennis Prager, when I called him and he wanted to discuss the situation with Ye, I didn't even let him get a word in. I just yelled at him. Honestly, I was very harsh. I'll tell you what I said to him. I said, I'm not playing this game with the Jewish community again. Because people were starting to say, well, if Candace doesn't condemn Ye, then she too is anti-Semitic. It means that she's also anti-Semitic by association. I said, I'm not playing this game with you guys again, is what I said to him. I said, you've wrongly smeared me and libeled me as anti-Semitic in the past. You were there for that, Dennis. You were one of the lone voices that stood up for me. When they BuzzFeed intentionally pulled out a clip of me to make it sound like I was defending Adolf Hitler. And I said, despite that, I was gracious and I was understanding, and I made amends with people to help them understand what that conversation was actually about. I said, but the second time you guys are going to come at me with smears of anti-Semitism, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not playing the game with you guys.
There you go. So I was very happy to see that. And look, she said him by name. She called him out by name. You Jews, you're not going to do this to me. And she could have been more assertive. She could have pointed to more experiences outside of just what's happened to herself. You know, these other celebrities that very clearly are suffering crucifixions at the hands of the ADL and all the other Jewish mafia leaders. It was interesting to hear that she already had a background in this suppression, that they had already framed her once to appear anti-Semitic. And so this is what they do. It's known. It's across all the different industries. If they can't destroy your reputation publicly, they go after your finances. If they can't get to you financially, they go after your family. You know, it is mafia-like tactics, and it's got to stop. And the only way it will stop is for public figures, influential people, to stand up to it and to expose it. Now, obviously easier said than done, because I don't have much to lose. Worst that happens to me is I get fired from my job. Hopefully I find a new one. But I'm not like a celebrity. I'm not going to lose millions of dollars and endorsement deals and all this other crap. You know, you saw what happened to Kanye. The guy was worth $2 billion, and then a couple of days later, he's worth $500 million. The guy lost $1.5 billion in a couple of days because he chose to stand up for Christians. And it's not even just Christians. It's everybody in America who is being pushed around by a very, very small ethnic and religious minority. 2% of the American population is Jewish. 2%. But then when you go look at the percent of people who own, or I should say run, the higher education institutions in America, the Ivy League schools, it's like 50% of them are run by Jews. You go look at Hollywood, the entertainment industry, all of the record labels, all the production studios. Do you think the Jewish representation on top of all of those is 2%? No. Once again, it's more like 25x that. Go and look at who runs all of the major financial institutions. And that's the one that they've been in for basically as long as time. That's their true gift. They're extremely intelligent people, and similar to Asians, they have a propensity to use math, but it's accounting math, concepts of accounting, to leverage that skill and create puppet strings over other people where they can pull on their finances and use that as blackmail to get them to behave the way they want them to. That's the truth. So I said Candace Owens is going to be the key to all this. She has to be very publicly outspoken that I don't care that I work for a Jew and that he's very powerful. He can fire me, he can cancel me if he wants to, but the fact that Jewish influence in all of our major institutions has at this point become unacceptably powerful, that's what I got to say. That's what I got to say. And I'm proud of her for doing it. It takes a lot of courage to do so. We'll see what happens. If they come down on her with the same wrath that they came down on Kanye, she'll be looking for a new job soon, and they'll dig up something in her past, something that's really embarrassing and all this other stuff. They'll call her crazy. They'll call her anti-Semitic. they'll try to destroy her as a human being. So that's an unfolding story that we all need to keep our eye on, because let's just be honest, the white people have failed. I'm saying this as a white guy, as one of the rare white guys who will actually still stand up for my race. For some reason, that's a problem, by the way. If you're white and you stand up for your race, you're a white supremacist, and that's evil. If you ask a black person, hey, you're black, is it important to you to stand up for your heritage? Is it important to you to stand up for the black community? And they say yes to any of those questions, that's kind of expected. Like, yeah, of course black people stand up for black people. Of course black people want to grow black communities and keep them safe. Okay, so why can't a white person say the same thing? That was one of the red pills that kind of really turned my mind off of everything that we see in front of us just being fake and two-faced lies. All of the news you see on TV about racial tension and whatnot. The moment the whole Black Lives Matter scam was like, what can you say? Tons of money was pumped into it to popularize it and to push that narrative of it's okay to say Black Lives Matter, but to suggest that white lives matter, that's racism. It just became so publicly obvious that I don't think people couldn't notice. And so America's in a very interesting place right now in terms of how it's going to respond to this ongoing, unnecessary racial conflict that's going on. It's completely unnecessary. If the news just reported that a crime took place and made it agnostic of skin color, and same thing for the victim, just report on the crime, report on the facts. Maybe no, I shouldn't say agnostic. You should say the race of the person who committed the crime. You should say the race of the people who were victims of the crime. But you shouldn't say, and this is why we need to do X about all X people. That's what's currently happening. You know, whenever a young white kid goes and shoots up whatever school or some kind of mass shooting, and look, as a white person, I'll fully admit the data is very clear. Mass shootings tend to be performed more often by white people, and especially young white males. It's like 90+% of them are young white males. So if a black person told me that statistic, I wouldn't sit here and go, are you racist? Do you think all black or all white people are mass shooters? You must hate white people. That's not an appropriate response. If somebody shares with you data that is true, it's the FBI's data, so you either think the FBI is racist and bigoted, or you just have a personal problem. But anyway, when the news is covering these stories, we should acknowledge the frequency at which we see these patterns of, okay, we reported 10 violent crimes last month. 8 out of 10 of them were committed by one race, and the other 2 were some other race. The problem is where the public misses things is that they think the violent crimes that are reported on the news represent all violent crime. And that's not true. The news gets to choose which violent crimes they report out on. Right? So when you see, the liberals were actually accusing Fox News of this the other night, I saw. The liberals were mad because Fox News would show these violent crime clips, and the majority of them were committed by black people. You know, pushing people into subway cars, stabbings, purse snatches, raiding the CVS's and looting. And the liberals and CNN were like, Fox News is clearly trying to paint black people as having more criminal-like behavior than white people. And it's like, yeah, but that's true. They're not trying to paint anything. They're portraying an accurate representation of what the crime statistics say. And so like when you start seeing these patterns of very clear hypocrisy, very clear manipulation of the facts, that's the red pill, politically speaking. Politically speaking. So that's Candace Owens. Keep an eye on the blacks versus Jews, because that's we need the black people to help America out here on this one, because white Americans have been whipped into such submission such white shame and white guilt that they're afraid to defend their own race at this point. It's sad. It's pathetic. If you're white, don't let yourself be one of these people. There's nothing to be ashamed of about being white. You have no reason to be ashamed at all. No reason to even be ashamed of what your ancestors did, because they're going to try to use the slavery card on you. They're going to try to say, well, aren't you ashamed of what your ancestors did owning slaves? Guess what your rebuttal is? Aren't you ashamed, assuming you're talking to a black person or whatever, because that's the comparison they're trying to make, is you as a white person have a unique and greater amount of shame that you should be held accountable for than black people. Because that's what we're talking about in slavery. Whites and blacks is the history of slavery in America. Well, guess what? Those black slaves that white American people bought were sold to them by black slave owners who sold their own population into slavery. So when we're talking about ancestors and reparations, perhaps we should go back to the beginning of the supply chain and say, hey, you people who decided that you should sell your own people into slavery, maybe we should punish you and take reparations from you. Maybe you should be more ashamed of what you did than the people who simply bought the labor resources to get their job done. Just saying. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm rationalizing slavery, only calling them labor resources. But the thing is, you can't compare modern culture and how it functions in terms of business, in terms of racial relations, to how society functioned in 1700. And for all millennia before that. Slavery has been a part of human history since the beginning of recorded time. Slavery built the pyramids. I mean, slavery is the backbone that all civilized countries were erected upon. So there's nothing uniquely shameful about the slavery that happened in America. There's nothing uniquely shameful about being white. These are all lies that have been shoved down with full force everybody's throat. And like, you didn't even have a chance to try to cough them back up and provide your argument or rebuttal. It's just, if you object to any of these things, you're a bad person, you're racist, you're a bigot, you think slavery was fine, etc. So you got to be intelligent enough and researched enough to have arguments to swat away people who try to morally blackmail you like that. Can't let that happen. Okay, so look at this post. Look at this post. This is a string of images on the subject of necessary challenges. So if you're into the self-motivation and self-growth kind of parts of the internet, like YouTube, where Jordan Peterson has his lectures, you know, if you're a young man, you might listen to Andrew Tate, all that stuff. These guys have very clearly good suggestions on how to go about becoming a more happy and fulfilled person. But you have to realize that I'm trying to get back to the image I wanted to look at. That their advice is actually not especially brilliant or even novel. It's the same advice that's been passed down via the Bible and via many other written word over the years. The great philosophers like Nietzsche. My goodness, I'm struggling over here, guys. Struggling, trying to do too much at once. Down to the classic literature of the Odyssey and all of the great works of Roman and Greek literature, all those stories. It's always the same. It's always some protagonist has some enormously difficult challenge ahead of him, and he feels like the challenge is overwhelming, that there's no possible way that he can achieve it. But there's no way around it either. It's like you have to go through that overwhelming, daunting challenge because it's the only path forward. Or you either lay there dormant and not growing and atrophying. And so that's what this post was about. And I liked one of these images here. I want to try to find it. Blah, 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 blah. Expressing the sentiment that a life without challenges is not something to wish for, Seneca said. Seneca was one of the ancient philosophers. I judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you. So if you ever watch professional sports, this is very obvious where you had, I'm going to use a basketball example, and Michael Jordan playing basketball in the 90s, he would tell you that one of the reasons he got to be as skilled as he is in basketball is because he was playing against extremely skilled people like Charles Barkley and all these other, famous 90s basketball players. And if you follow bodybuilding, the Mr. Olympia Phil Heath, 7-time Mr. Olympia, he says openly he would not have achieved the physique that he did if it weren't for the number 2 in line, Kai Green, being right on his heels all 7 years of that training. So it is the challenge of either challengers, other people, or circumstantial challenges that force you to grow. And so if you see a challenge and your response is to avoid that challenge, then you're basically saying, I don't want to grow. And if that becomes habitual, where you kind of avoid all the big challenges in life because all of them just feel too stressful, you're content with the way things are, you end up with becoming this little fat slob right here. I shouldn't say little, this enormous fat slob right here, who is hooked up to an IV of Coca-Cola, shoveling down KFC, Krispy Kreme, McDonald's as his nutrients, hooked to a smartphone, or maybe it's a computer screen, or whatever other means of electronic entertainment, some kind of screen. Could be a TV binging Netflix, could be aimlessly scrolling social media. And then for all of your problems, whether it's your obesity or your poor mental health, you think you can solve those things by just getting a bunch of medication and shoving that into your body. So you're shoving this poisonous food, these poisonous medications, these poisonous drinks full of corn syrup, and you're spending all your time glued to a screen. And that's become basically the average American life at this point. It's pathetic. It lacks inspiration, even at the smallest level. It's just sadness. If you've seen the movie Idiocracy, this is what's happening in our country. People are content to just sit at home, glued to their screens, eating shitty food, on artificial medication, jerking off to Pornhub, watching the newest Marvel movies, spying on the rest of their friends digitally via social media, but not actually interacting with those friends. And by the way, I know I'm coming down hard on this lifestyle. As a transparent Christian who is very flawed myself, I succumb to this pretty frequently because it is hard. Like the temptations of convenience, that can turn into apathy very easily if you're not careful. Where it's like, it really is easier to just throw a pizza in the oven from the freezer rather than actually cook a healthy version of a pizza. It's more engaging to sit here and watch a crime drama than watch some hour-long Bible special. But you got to choose. Do I want to learn? Do I want to become stronger? Or do I just want to be entertained and distracted? So those are my thoughts on this sedentary lifestyle that has taken over our culture. Yeah, Harley says this is why men need God and a wife. Absolutely. They need both. They really do. This account, by the way, Recovering Overthinker, is a great account. Shout out to them if you ever just want some motivational stuff, especially if you're an overthinker, somebody who's introverted, who can kind of get lost in the rabbit hole of your own mind. That's a good account to give you some tips on not spiraling too bad. Okay, there's a few Twitter headlines I wanted to go over this morning. If you didn't hear the big news yesterday, Trump is now officially unbanned on Twitter, thanks to Elon Musk. Or perhaps thanks to Elon Musk's poll where the people voted that they did want Trump back on Twitter. I called that, by the way, in my morning broadcast. I said that Elon is going to use this as an opportunity to get Trump back on, but do so without having to take all of the heat for such a controversial decision. He'll say it was democratically decided by a vote, and that's what the people want, so that's what he's doing. And that's exactly how it played out. Now, I also included in my prediction that Trump would obviously then be in a difficult place of, he put all this money behind and his name behind Truth Social, and it kind of undermines Truth Social for him to come back to Twitter and start using it as his platform to talk to his people. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on how that plays out. In reality, I think this guy has 2 years of campaigning to do before the 2024 election. I just don't see him having access to Twitter, now unbanned, and not using it for the next 2 years. Like, come on, do you guys really think that's going to happen? Twitter has, it's kind of stupid to throw numbers out there in terms of how many Twitter accounts there are. There's like 300 million or something like that. But everybody knows Twitter is scourged with bots and fake accounts. So nobody really knows how many unique users on Twitter there really are. That's one of the things Elon is trying to clean up. But so that's all good and well. Trump is unblocked. We'll see if he actually comes back. My prediction is that he will. And my prediction on top of that is he'll do the exact same thing Elon did. And he'll say, even though I just said out loud and promised you guys that I was going to stay on Truth Social, I got to respect my people, and my people want me on Twitter, so that's what I got to do. I'm thinking that's what happens. This morning, I sit down on Twitter, and guess who's trending? Alex Jones. Talked a little bit about this yesterday, that the natural procession here for Twitter is you're doing all of this under the guise of free speech. You brought back Andrew Tate, you brought back Alex Jones, you're unbanning these conservative political people. If you say you're doing this for the sake of free speech, why are you stopping short of unbanning a couple of other controversial conservative commentators? Primary ones being Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes. So something is going to give here in the near future. I think what this is that Elon is trying to stabilize Twitter first while making that progress towards free speech without immediately losing all of his ad revenue. Because if he brings those two back, he risks even more ADL blackmail boycotting his advertisers. They're already unhappy that Trump came back, and I'm sure they're actively pursuing sending angry hostage letters to all of Twitter's advertisers, trying to destroy Twitter. Like that's not even a secret that Elon Musk has said that there's an advertising boycott that is being fueled by these high-pressure activist groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, like the Anti-Defamation League. We know their plan now. It's out there very clearly. You just heard Candace Owens saying, you guys have done this to me in the past. You're trying to do it to me again now. It's the same thing you did to Kanye and Kyrie and Chappelle. It's formulaic and it's predictable once you've seen it before. But the problem is the greater population hasn't been paying enough attention. So the dots are not yet connected to them. And so they still think Alex Jones is this crazy conspiracy theorist. And they still think Nick Fuentes is a dangerous white supremacist. When both of these guys, all they do is they talk about uncomfortable truths. They talk about the disproportionate Jewish influence in all those institutions. They talk about racial realism. They talk about how this country was flat out safer and more successful when you look at the metrics of long-term happiness and fulfillment when more homes had male-female marriages in them with children, when more women were at home rather than the workplace, when we weren't aborting 1 million kids per year. People are allowed to have that opinion of America was a better place before we were doing all that. That's not illegal to say. You shouldn't get deplatformed for having an opinion of, honestly, I think America was better when it was more traditional. Like that, it's in my opinion, pretty confusing that you have these liberal overreactions who say, "Oh my God, you think women should stay at home and raise a family? That's just so misogynistic and anti-woman, and you're just trying to control women. You don't want women to be happy." It's like, for all of human history, women have been the star of the show at home. They have been lifted up and praised for what they do. Families could not succeed for all of history without strong, capable women exhibiting that strength and those capabilities, their unique advantages to raising families at home and taking care of the home. That used to be a celebrated aspect of femininity and womanhood. And, it's all just gone completely downhill ever since then. Ever since women's liberation, it's been a mess. Okay, so Alex Jones coming back to Twitter. We'll see. He actually put up a 2-minute video that we watched yesterday on the stream that basically said, "Hey, Elon, I know you're under a lot of pressure. Don't sit here thinking about trying to get me back on the platform. I have my own platform. I have InfoWars. I talk to 1 million people a day. So hopefully at some point in the future, you can get me back on. That's great. I'll appreciate it. But don't sit here and destroy Twitter and lose all of your advertising right now. Long term, if you say you represent free speech, then you obviously should, just to be a man of your word and your man of your principles. But at this point in time, having owned Twitter for all of 3 weeks, make those first steps of bringing back Babylon Bee, Jordan Peterson, Donald Trump. We're making progress. I said it last night. Don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. So that's what's going on with Alex Jones. What else we have? You have your crazy Kermit the Frog dictator here. You want to listen to what Bill Gates had to say back during the COVID era? Just to remind everybody of how evil this guy is. Just to remind you, when he was talking about the lockdowns.
But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice. There will be the ability, particularly in rich countries, to open up if things are done well over the next few months. But for the world at large, normalcy only returns when we've largely vaccinated the entire global population. But
So you heard it there. Those are just outright lies and totalitarian beliefs that you think you have a choice? You thought you had a choice on whether or not you get to go to work or go to church? That's not your choice. That's my choice. I get to choose whether or not you get to participate in society, whether or not you're able to make an income. That's my choice. That's Bill Gates' choice. That's the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, the World Government Summit. That's their choice. You thought you had a choice? Just saying, these are the people calling the shots. And then you heard the outright lie of, we will not return to normalcy until the majority of the world is vaccinated. Well, how did that go, Bill? Did that turn out to be true? Are we basically returned to normal in terms of COVID lockdowns and restrictions now, despite the fact that less than half of the world, dramatically less than half of that, got vaccinated? I thought you were a scientist. I thought you knew everything about epidemiology and pandemics. So why was your prediction wrong? Maybe you were predicting that because you had a financial stake in the solution to the problem, the vaccine. Maybe. Could that be it? Maybe you're just a power-hungry tyrant who doesn't know what to do with your life after accomplishing building Microsoft. And you do all of this under the guise of being a humanitarian, trying to stop disease, and all coming from the same person who says there's too many people on Earth and we need to start depopulating. It's a lot of doublespeak, and you can't let these people get away with the things they have said very publicly. So that's Bill Gates. Anytime I see the evil cabal stating their agenda openly, when they let it slip out that way, you thought you were in control of your life? No. I'm in control of your life. When they have those slips of the tongue, you got to remember them. because there's going to be a future point where they try to do the same thing again. Promise, guarantee. It's more than likely going to be related to climate change. They're going to tell you that, I'm sorry, even though you've had a car your whole life and you haven't hurt anybody with that car, we need to take your car because it uses fossil fuels. And even though your home is your home that you have bought and paid for, unfortunately, it's emitting too much carbon, when you heat it the way you do, because you're not using solar panels. We're going to need you to surrender your home over to the government until you're able to get yourself a home that's run on renewable energy. This stuff is coming, and it's going to be tied to the digital identification wallets where, I'm sorry, you drove 500 miles last month, and that's too many carbon emissions, so we got to turn off your driver's license. Sorry, can't travel this month. Hey, we looked at your receipts thanks to our digital banking currency, and we saw that you bought a lot of meat last month, and we said that you're not allowed to buy more than 2 pounds of meat, so we're going to have to pause your bank account. Seriously, that's where this stuff is going. I'm not exaggerating. This isn't some kind of science fiction movie about what might happen. This is all stuff that's already planned and in the works. And this is the stuff that Alex Jones brought to light years ago when he talked about the New World Order and the Great Reset, these digital currencies, the globalists trying to assimilate power through all these different means. He's been saying this stuff for years, and now you know why he was banned, because it all turned out to be true. So when you see Elon not bringing Alex Jones back, you really do need to pause. Hopefully it's because he's just trying to, like I said, make positive progress towards free speech and bring the whole package eventually. But Elon has previously tweeted himself that he met with the ADL. He met with these activist groups who like to blackmail people financially and reputationally if they tweet the wrong thing, if they use wrongthink. So I'm a little skeptical that this is just about not going too fast in bringing these people back and unbanning them. I think Elon is still, unfortunately, on the receiving end of blackmail from these groups that he cannot currently respond to. Answer this question. Emma the Gamer, 24XX. How many drugs do you take? What makes you think I'm on drugs? Because I have these crazy conspiracy theories? Is that why I'm on drugs? But if you're referring to fitness-related stuff, I am on testosterone replacement therapy. I have been for about 5 years. 200 milligrams a week, split into 2 doses. Mondays and Thursdays. Pretty straightforward. Hopefully that answers your question. So here's an interesting tweet that I saw on this whole subject of reinstating people from being banned on Twitter and whatnot, and how Elon is handling it. I haven't fact-checked this, but just JT Lewis person alleges to be somebody who lost their brother in the Sandy Hook shooting, which is the shooting that Alex Jones was sued $1 billion for talking about. And all he did was suggest that the shooting may have been staged or that the FBI may have been involved. And so because of that, he hurt the parents' feelings. And because of that, he has to pay $1 billion. It's that whole case is just such clear signs of partisan abuse of the judicial system, trying to push the whole gun conversation. It's just bad. It's just really bad. They don't want people to question mass shooting events because it's a fact that the FBI has had their hands in many mass shooting events before. That's just a fact. We know that. FBI handlers and whatnot sit in these chat rooms where they gaslight and hype up some of these people who are already prone to fringe beliefs. And in some cases, they even help them educate themselves on weaponry and even finance that. What are your thoughts about steroids? I'll answer that in 1 second. So on the Sandy Hook guy, he claims to be a family member of somebody who died at Sandy Hook. And he's saying, look, even as somebody who has been harassed for a decade about whether or not the shootings are real, I still think you should reinstate Alex Jones. And his reasoning is that Coordinated efforts to censor and ban him off social media only deepen his base in their eyes, substantiating their crazy conspiracy theories. It's pretty funny. He still thinks it's a conspiracy theory that these orchestrated bans across all social media platforms are done with an agenda. They're not done just because, like, oh, you hurt somebody's feelings. No, it's about suppressing entire narratives, such as if somebody says something about Jewish influence, you ban that person, not because you have a problem with that person. You have a problem with people talking about Jewish influence, period. So that's that. And I'll do one last update on Twitter, and then I'll answer your question, Emma, about steroids. Okay, Geraldo, Republicans got control of the House, and the first thing they do is not explore how to tame inflation or crime. They launch an investigation of President and Hunter Biden. Boring, divisive, unwanted, zero positive impact, blah, blah, blah. Geraldo is a fake Republican. He does spots on Fox News, so people think he's a Republican, but people, maybe they say he's a more moderate one. He's not. He's just a Democrat. He's a former TV show host. And frankly, if you don't understand the weight of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, then, or the Ashley Biden diary scandal, then I'm sorry, like, those things are legitimate reasons to investigate this person. And the matters of inflation or crime are results of Democrat policies. The soft on crime policies of catch and release, no cash bail, shoplifting up to $500, etc. So I'm sure they're walking and chewing at the same time. They can do both of these. They can tame inflation. They can work on crime. But an investigation has to happen for the Biden family regime. Okay, that's going to do it for the news updates this morning. Got all those in within 1 hour. Happy about that. We can talk fitness now. Emma, what are my thoughts about steroids? Being someone who's been on steroids for 5 years, I think that there is a place in the supplementation routine for people who genuinely need them, that it actually just improves your baseline health and life at a baseline. If you're somebody who actually has clinically diagnosed low testosterone, for example, steroids, meaning just testosterone, will dramatically improve your life. It'll improve your energy levels. It'll improve your metabolism. It'll improve your psychological profile, your optimism. It helps steer from depression. The lethargy, if you have low test, it really is a disruptive psychological and physical state to be in. So I would encourage any males to go and get their testosterone levels checked if they feel like they're suffering from any of those symptoms that I mentioned. Or, low sex drive is another common one. So there's an immediate improvement to all of those factors of life if you're going from low testosterone to healthy testosterone by getting on TRT. There may be other questions. I'm not sure exactly what you meant by what are your thoughts about steroids, because other questions might be, how do you feel about steroids in sports, for example? Like, that's a very specific question, but it is kind of a, well, how do you feel about steroids question? The interesting thing is that the sport of bodybuilding, which is like the sport that I follow the most, it's the one I care the most about, doesn't care whatsoever about steroids. It's every individual has the autonomy and the responsibility to keep themselves healthy, and without being healthy, you really can't accumulate muscle and be better in your sport. So if you fully abuse steroids, you'll actually destroy your health. And so it's this balance of, how can I, as safely as possible, use these performance-enhancing drugs to get the outcomes that I want, whether that's hypertrophy, meaning the size of the muscles, or strength gains, obviously meaning the strength of the muscle. Or if you play a sport, it might be improving certain functionality, whether it's a better high jump or a better mile time, whatever. So it has to be decided. Every individual sport, or the governing body of each individual sport, they have to make that decision themselves. You have to say, are steroids okay and they're fair game for everybody, or we got to ban them for everybody? I like bodybuilding because it's full on individual responsibility. You decide what's best for yourself. And the truth is about other professional sports, whether that's the Major League Baseball or the NBA, the National Basketball Association, or the NFL, which is National Football League, any of these American professional sports, hopefully you all understand already, and you're not completely naive, that steroids are rampant. The majority of those sports, the majority of the top athletes in those sports have used performance-enhancing drugs, either are on them currently or have used them for significant portions of their career. Like, you don't get to achieve being within the 1% of all athletes without some pretty dramatic intervention from exogenous hormones. That's my opinion. Pyro Ways. I was wondering what made you want to become a fitness model, since I feel like you completely represent the very intellectual cliche. That's a compliment from me. I appreciate the compliment. Let's see. It was 8 years ago when I got into bodybuilding and the fitness lifestyle and all that stuff. And I was just your average dad bod kind of guy. I can try to go to my Instagram and see if I can pull up some old pictures. Do I have any old stuff on here? I have to scroll way down. But the reason I got started was very simple. I wanted to feel better about myself. I was not happy with the way I looked as a dad bod, saggy boobs, wide hips. What else is there about dad bods that's just gross and unattractive? Got a little beer belly, all that stuff. So I was just fundamentally not very happy with the way I looked. And if you're not happy with the way you look, it's hard to approach life and everywhere you go with much confidence. So when you're walking around life with low confidence, everything is harder, whether that's going and talking to a girl, whether that's going to a job interview, whether that's like turning a new leaf and starting this new endeavor in your life. If you don't have confidence that you're going to succeed in any of those things, then it's an uphill battle. It really is hard. It's like Sisyphus. Hey, there we go. There's a OG picture. I knew there had to be one on here eventually. So that top right picture right there is when I started back in 2014. And that's, if I'm being 100% truthful, that is actually about a month or two into my journey. So I had already lost about 15 pounds, maybe 10 pounds. But as you can see, I was not genetically gifted. Like, I was not an athlete. I had never played any sports in my life before I got into all this stuff. I had the whole Austin Powers, the hairy thing. Look at the arms, the arms are little twig arms. So there was nothing remarkable at all about my old physique where I started from. And so that's one of the reasons I created this channel, is to try to share with people whatever background you have that you think, look at this, guys. Look at this. Come on. That's me at 27 years old, looking all chubby and soft with these man boobs. And that was my first bulk, by the way. Pyro, I know. It's the thing is I'm super duper harsh on what people call average. What we have accepted for average nowadays, frankly, what you see on the left there is kind of the average guy. It's, not looks like he doesn't really exercise, but he doesn't have abs, he doesn't have pecs, doesn't have arms, doesn't really have any muscle. He's just got a layer of fat over him, and that's it. That's your average guy. And the thing is, that didn't used to be the average guy. If you don't have to go that far back. If you just go back to the 70s and 80s, the average guy actually had abs. Not like a ripped six-pack, but, you could see his abs. And it's only because of the quality of the food and the discouragement of physical activity in America over the last few decades that this, on the left, has become the commonly accepted average. So when you say it's not too bad for modern day, sure. But the actual capabilities of human males, are so much better than what we accept as average right now. And so I 8 years ago, 2014, I started looking on the internet on routines and how to diet successfully. How many calories do you need? How much protein should you eat? What supplements do I need? What gym routine should I use? So glad I did it, because that was a life-changing decision. As mentioned, it really does go back to the confidence thing. Like, after you've achieved a physique like this, you guys, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to sound egotistical, but the fact is, if you work on something for 5 days a week for 5 years, you're going to have a lot of results on whatever that thing is. So if it's your body that you were working on for 5 days a week, or it was a college education or a career, whatever, if you're putting 40 hours a week into something, after you stack up the years, you should have a substantial amount of results to show. And what results to show actually are a fair claim on confidence. When you can show other people that I get results, when I say something out loud, like I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, I'm going to watch my diet, when I say those things, you know that I mean it, because I have the evidence to show you. I couldn't achieve the physique if I wasn't doing those things. So you know that not only am I an honest person, I have integrity, I have work ethic. You can know all of those things about me just based on how I look. When I walk into a room, you already know that I'm a man of my word and that I'm a man of discipline. So it's about way, way more than, oh, you end up with a cool looking body and that's why you should do it. The reason you should do it is because it instills confidence and self-discipline. Yeah, Pyro, that first week is very, very difficult. In my opinion, it's really the whole first year that I struggled with. It's not easy to go from a sedentary lifestyle where you're used to just eating things based on whether or not they sounded delicious, not based on how many calories, not based on how many grams of protein. That's a dramatic life change. And if you try to do it cold turkey, if you just try to say, I am no longer eating fast food, I'm no longer drinking soda, I am now going to the gym 5 days a week, I'm never going to drink alcohol again. If you try to do all of it cold turkey, and that's what people try to do, I know because I tried and failed to do it several times, that's too much. That's in contradiction to the evidence you have about yourself and what your real, I'm not trying to be mean, but what your real capabilities are. If you have never successfully dieted for a month before in your life, and you have never successfully gone to the gym 5 times a week for any number of consecutive weeks, why do you think you can just flip a switch and suddenly do something you've never done before in your entire life with perfect execution, and not just one thing, but you're going to do the dieting also, and you're going to give up the alcohol also, and you're going to start drinking a gallon of water a day also? It's like, that's unrealistic. So you have to say, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with a 3-day-a-week routine. And once I become consistent with that, I'm going to add a 4th day. And once I'm consistent with that, I'm going to add a 5th day. That's how I did it. Did you hit the gym right away, or did you start out with body weight and home workouts? Thanks, Harley, for the kind words. Harley and I go way back. Believe it or not, this is actually a fun connection. Harley is the person who got me into fitness modeling. We met several years ago, and immediately connected just because we were both into the fitness stuff, and she had done some modeling before, and so she's like, you already have the physique to model if you wanted to, and so here we go. Look at that, Harley. Look at this OG picture right here. Very first photo shoot with Mike way back when. Anyway, so the question that you asked, Pyro, did I hit the gym right away, or did I start out with body weight at home? I did start out at home. That's what most people do because they're a little bit intimidated by going to a gym. They don't know how to use the machines. They don't know the exact routine to follow. That's all okay. Totally fine. When I started at home, I started with push-ups, and I also started with crunches, which you don't need to do crunches. You don't need to do ab exercises at home. Look at that transformation, guys. Bam. That's actually closer to what I really looked like when I started, before I lost that first 10 or 15 pounds. Those tiny little arms that you could just snap into. So I started at home doing push-ups, and the first thing I bought was a pair of those adjustable dumbbells that you can like screw on the side and add weight to. And they only went up to like 25 pounds. But that was enough. You know, I started doing curls. I started doing some bench press. I didn't even have a weight bench though. So I laid my back on the ottoman next to the couch, and I did bench press on the couch ottoman with a couple of light dumbbells. I learned what chest flies were. So I did those. I learned shoulder routines, like doing lateral raises out to the side and then front raises up in the front. So yeah, I got started at home, but I will say this on the subject of training at home and home workouts. It's not realistic to expect that you'll create a physique like the physique I have or any kind of like really significant muscle mass just doing body weight training at home and some light dumbbells. I mean, you actually need heavy weight, hundreds of pounds worth of weight to start developing significant amounts of muscle mass. So that's me just telling you the truth, giving you the red pill that totally you can get started at your house. And in my case, I was self-conscious about the way I looked. I wanted to look a little bit better before I went to the gym and was surrounded by people who probably already look better, which, by the way, that's a lie. You'll find out as soon as you walk into a major commercial gym, even if you're out of shape, the majority of other people in there are out of shape too. Like, sure, there's going to be guys like me that are in there and whatnot, but the majority of people in a public gym are not walking around at single-digit body fat percentage. They're not walking around jacked as hell. They're just like you. They just want to improve their health, and they've probably been putting it off for a long time, just like you. And so everybody is on their own individual path, and the sooner you start your path, the better. Okay, A896. I'm almost 26 years old and injured my... Oh man, I can't see it. What does that say? My cursor is over this. Click to reply. Injured my lower back a few months ago by lifting a dumbbell the wrong way. My lumbar spine never the same since that moment. I decided to buy loop-style bands to train with them instead of free weights or less stress on my lumbar spine, but I'm not really sure if they build muscle as effective as free weights. Are they really as effective as free weights in terms of building muscle? Apologies for the English. English is actually very good, my friend. So the bands, those weighted bands that have like a different amount of tension on them, they're really good for physical therapy work, such as trying to recover from an injury. But if your question is, can they replace free weights, whether that's dumbbell or barbell, to gain muscle mass and to change the way your physique looks? No. Unfortunately, no. That's just the red pill. That's the truth. Anybody who tells you you can create a badass physique using bands, using loops, they're lying to you. There is not a single fitness model who achieved their entire physique using loops. There's not a single bodybuilder who did that. Anybody who has a jacked physique that's really lean and all that stuff, they did not do so using loops. They have their usage in your arsenal of things, such as physical therapy, stretching, and whatnot. But using loops is not going to be what creates substantial amounts of muscle on your frame. That would be the truth about the loops. Fun little scroll through Instagram history there. I hadn't looked at some of the older pictures in a while. This was a fun one. This was a photo shoot in downtown Portland when the Black Lives Matter riots were going on. It was a violent scene. Lots of unhappy people, unhappy citizens. And so I wanted to do a photo shoot to kind of capture the times that we were living in. Also, my dog had been attacked the previous week by a drug dealer's dog. And I was feeling pretty John Wick, honestly. I was like, listen, if somebody hurts my dog, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a big problem. Somebody hurts my dog. Just saying. So that's what that photo shoot was about. Okay, you guys, I'm at an hour and a half, and I got church starting in 10 minutes. So it's time for me to wrap it up, get my time with the Lord in here. And then I don't know what I'm doing with the rest of my Sunday yet. We'll see. I'll probably chop this podcast session up into clips and put it on YouTube. And that'll be my day. No gym today. I'm taking it easy. Just enjoying some relaxation time this weekend. Nowadays, I only train 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and I take the weekends off. Anywho, fun times hanging out with you guys. Thanks for joining. It's good to see you, Harley, if you're still around. Banda, good to see you as well. Glad to see the first-time chatters in here. Pyro, 8896. Good to see you guys, and I appreciate you asking questions. All right, have a great Sunday.